A very good evening to you. Welcome to another News Make a Live broadcast right here on DBS Television. My name is Timothy Polion. We'll be together until 10 o'clock this evening, at which time we'll be concluding with the clip that peaked. And the ritual continues, and that is in the build-up to the island's 40th independence anniversary. We take a look back at what really transpired during the period 78 to 79, and then we'll be speaking with two special guests on some of the activities that are coming up. This time around last year, 2018, I spoke with Mr. Peter Josie, one of two individuals who are still alive who participated in constitutional talks leading to St. Lucia's political independence from Britain. And the other individual who is still alive is former Attorney General, Mr. Evans Caldron. In a moment, I'll have as my guests on this evening's program, Mr. Tony Nicholas, Marketing and Public Relations Officer for the Independence Committee, and the President of the National Youth Council, Mr. Jeshuran Andrew. But first, let us hear from Mr. Peter Josie. Remember, I spoke with him in February of last year in the run-up to the island's 39th independence anniversary. The first question I posed to him was why he, Josie, opposed St. Lucia's decision to attain political independence, and that effort would have been led then by John Compton.
I was invited to go with Mr. Louisi at the very first round of talks, and there were 3 rounds in all. So I went with Mr. Louisi at the first round, and at the Mr. Compton, Premier Compton, and Girodi represented the government at the first. So I was there at all 3. Right. And I like the difficult question that you start with, because obviously your mind has been prejudiced and not trying to be critical like a lot of other St. Lucians. We were never opposed, the Labour Party, from its inception. In fact, from George Charles' era, the party's rules had always intimated that it would be for freedom. It didn't specifically mention the word independence. I was in a group called the St. Lucia Forum, where we were actually mentioning independence and things. So, but at that time, it was a group people considered too radical, too black power, too pro-socialist / communist. So they were afraid of that. So it's not really true to say we were against independence. What is true to say, and that's what I want people to remember, your viewers and St. Lucians to remember, we were against the method by which Premier Compton tried to achieve independence. That was
what is the method then?
The method was to do it without full consultation of the people. And I was very happy, well, I shouldn't say happy, I was relieved to hear Mr. Richelieu, one of the prominent lawyers in St. Lucia, speak about the Constitution recently. It looked like it was a rebroadcast. And talking about the Constitution and some of the weaknesses in the Constitution, precisely the kind of thing that I think we should have done 39 years ago. But there's no point looking backwards and crying over spilt milk. In the review that was almost done by Dr. Anthony before they left office, there was a team of people headed by Susie Dovine. I think there was wide consultation. They made recommendations. Obviously, some of the politicians in office and even those out of office did not seem to agree with that recommendation. So the Constitution is still in flux. It is still not amended and updated. But to answer your question directly, we were never against it. In fact, I would say that George Charles's Labour Party and the St. Lucia Forum, of which I was a part, were as much for independence as Mr. Compton, because I think, if I read Mr. Guy Ellis correctly, it seems that as early as '64, the UWP, when it first won elections and formed the government of St. Lucia, we're talking about improved constitutional status for the island. That is why they got full internal self-government in '67, if you recall. Mm-hmm. So it is not true to say, and it's not even a fair criticism to make. Do it right, let the people decide. That's what the Labour Party's stance was basically have free and fair consultation, find out from the people what kind of constitution they have. How do you know they'll want a two-tier parliamentary system? Why do you think that they would want a Senate? Why couldn't they want different people to represent different organizations represented in the government in a way that has not been done
But
before.
I think, Mr. Josie, that things are always in a state of flux, and the process would have been to take St. Lucia to political independence from Britain, and going forward, make the changes along the way. And even 39 years after independence, we have not done the necessary changes in terms of reforming our constitution. So it's then the reason that there would always be this hurdle, there's always be the impediment in the way of Sir John Compton going ahead and gaining political independence from Britain.
You're almost answering my question for me. You're posing the question and answering it too. And I'm putting it to you that the hardest hurdle to cross is the initial hurdle. So it's better you throw it open to the people. Do not be so arrogant as
in what form? In terms of consultation? When you say consultation, speak to the various interest groups, the various organizations.
That's correct. Ask them what
parties.
kind of constitution. Go clause by clause in the constitution. Would you like a governor general, for example, Timothy? That is a good one that comes to mind. Or would you like to have a president elected by the people?
But wasn't
How do we know?
Wasn't the SLP at the time just hell-bent, as is the case now, and just opposing the government for opposing sake? And I'm not basically taking shots at the SLP, but saying that opposition parties in St. Lucia, normally that is what they do, because the SLP at the time was saying, why not have elections, general elections, before independence?
The SLP, of which I was a part, I can speak to that. I cannot speak to any before or after my time. The SLP, of which I was a part, we were determined to give St. Lucia a constitution that would be superior to anything around us and that would make St. Lucia a better place. And I could tell you one of the ideas we had was to try to get the head of state elected for a specific length of time at a specific time of the year by all of the people. We no longer wanted Her Majesty the Queen to represent us. We didn't want a queen. And we certainly didn't want to be bogged down by something that was handed down from England, because they would always hand down to you what is made in their image and likeness. And I was so relieved to hear Richelieu, a lawyer in whom I have a lot of confidence, repeat this under the common law in England. Sometimes our own constitution could be bypassed. You know, if we go to the Privy Council, they would take what in England is practiced in the common law of England instead of recognizing the constitution.
But why wasn't a decision taken to allow then Premier John Compton to take the island to political independence, and in the event the SLP would have won the election, then change the constitution? Was that too much to ask?
I don't think that was too much to ask. As a matter of fact, it is the first time, I think, in the last 20, 30 years, I'm hearing it put that way. We, on reflection, should have done that. But when you have been in opposition for 15 years, you find a country in a particular state or stage of development, you try hard to try to mold it in the way you wanted. And maybe that's why the whole leadership thing started, because some people felt that some other people were going too slowly, etc., etc. We were not of the same minds, and that is the problem too. You have to talk and talk and talk. George Odlum and I could finish his other statements, and I think so too with Frances Mitchell, Mikey Pilgrim, and George Odlum and John Odlum and that lot. But the other members of the Labour Party were almost new, and they were talking the same old language of, you know.
But why risk all the divisiveness? Because there's a footage to show that you were part of demonstrations and people with placards, all in the run-up to the island's political independence.
Well, after a while, Timothy, we knew, not after a while, we knew from the inception that Mr. Compton as Premier could only do so much. The cards were really in the hands of the British government, specifically in the hands of the Minister for Foreign and Commonwealth Affairs. So all what we said and did, whether it was in Parliament or outside of St. Lucia, somehow had to reach Mr. Ted Rowlands, and that was our role, to tell Mr. Ted Rowlands, listen, look at the amount of people on this demonstration.
Would the men would be supporters of the St. Lucia Labour Party?
Yes, and do you think that you can listen to Premier Compton, even though he has recently won an election in '74, I think it was, against those people, because people who might not have turned out to the polls to vote. If you're going to change a constitution, maybe they didn't know a lot about it, why did they have to come and listen to the Labour Party and even start demonstrating with the Labour Party? So the Labour Party's behavior was aimed at London and the Foreign and Commonwealth Office. To some extent, to St. Lucians were discontented.
But in the main, I wasn't around during that time, really. But don't you think that those who were discontented in the main would have been supporters of the St. Lucia Labour Party?
Yes, it became a political party divide. I think that is true. It's no point in denying
But is that really reflecting the mood of the entire the St. Lucian population at the time? Because I'm sure supporters of the United Workers' Party would have supported Sir John Compton's stance on the issue.
You are making a case against party politics, because even today, the hardcore people of the Labour Party, if they call out to a demonstration for some frivolous reason, they would go, even today. And I would think the same thing would be true about the UWP. So, you know.
That's where the whole divisiveness started, from that era before independence. The whole thing about people putting party before country.
Well, let's put it that way, Timothy. The only system of government we know is the two-party system or the multi-party system. Okay, they can be more than one, they can be independent candidates. That's the way we know it. How else would we choose our government if there wasn't some contest? Sometimes you can argue that it can be taken too far. Sometimes we don't actually argue the deep fundamental things that is troubling us. For example, you don't hear about anything about black power, the Africans in the Caribbean, black people, how they have suffered, what can be done in certain areas. Should we bring the two parties together to achieve A, B, and C? Sometimes I think we can take the partisan politics too far. If there's something good happening for the country, by which I mean some big-time investment, do we have an automatic knee-jerk reaction that because it's not my party in power, I will not support it?
But in London, during those discussions, the pre-independence period, what was the discussion like? What were you saying, for example? What was your...
In London?
In London.
We were basically saying to the minister, to Ted Rowlands, who was the minister of... that, listen, we understand what you're trying to do. And we understand what Mr. Compton is trying to do. What we want you to do is to test the ground. If you are as democratic as you say you are, and trust me, these are the points I was making, because Mr. Luisi probably brought me there to make those points. I was not behaving badly, but I was very strong, because when I'm representing my people, I'm afraid of nobody. So I said, listen,
and when you're representing your position as well.
My position, yes. What we have come here to do is to tell you, with all due respect, that what you want to do in St. Lucia, we understand. You just letting go these islands. As a matter of fact, towards the end, I think Alan Luisi got a little mad with me when everything was agreed, and they said they're giving £50,000 to St. Lucia. I said, no, we don't want it. Well, I was in no position to agree or disagree, because the Premier was in the government, Mr. Compton. And I said, if I was the Premier of St. Lucia, I would reject that offer. I would not have taken it. And I said so to Rowlands, and Luisi said, you know, tapping me and things. So
in the end, we got the £50,000?
Yeah, we got the £50,000. And I don't even think we got it in 1 year.
What was it for?
That's to go and have a good time. You know, go and do what you have to do. Just leave me alone. Mm-hmm. We don't want anything but... And the other thing, too, I mean, they kept protecting, quote-unquote, not protecting, but offering a fairly safe banana market until they could not do it anymore. So everything in this thing was in transition, in temporary, in flux. Nothing was concrete. The only thing that could have been concrete is if the people of St. Lucia were together. Some people say, if there's no bloodshed, if you didn't fight for something, you wouldn't appreciate it. Well, that's not really true. Sometimes you can have something which you work very hard for, right? You didn't bleed, nobody died, nobody shed blood, but you appreciate it because of the effort you put into it. And I think the Labour Party would have the Labour Party supporters would have appreciated independence even more. Sometimes even the flag has been queried. Even the flag that I'm wearing now has been queried because it is felt that this represents only one point of view. This may or may not be true, but that is how some people see it. And you have to think and listen. You can't just dismiss it.
Do you think that the posture that was taken by the St. Lucia Labour Party, or the position taken by the SLP then, and even yourself, and it's 39 years later, you can be very frank on this particular matter, was opportunistic because the SLP wanted to win the upcoming general election. And it was posturing, it was, putting on a show. There was a lot of grandstanding and maybe campaigning as well.
I don't come here if I'm not serious. And I'm not posturing and trying to put on any show. And I don't mince words when I speak. I want you to know that. I think you know that. The SLP was doing what it had to do as an opposition party. We felt that we could give the people of St. Lucia the best government they ever had. We also felt that in '74, as Mr. Compton himself might have said, there was certain cocoa macaquerie, especially in the Dennery North seat, and one or two other seats. And it was very hurtful because we felt, and I felt at the time, I've since let that go. It's immaterial now. I don't hold things for that long. That we actually ought to have formed the government.
So you guys were out for revenge?
I wouldn't call it that. I wouldn't call it that. We were fighting as hard as we could to make the point that you can't just play with us. You can't do that. You can't just play with big men as if they were little boys in the days when the colonial powers were saying there was no franchise. People 21 years, if they had to vote, they had to have some qualifications if they were to go up for elections. No, you couldn't do that with us.
So it was all about your ego as opposed to...
Times have changed.
Was it about your ego as opposed to representing the interests of the people?
Sometimes you have to put your ego aside and call yourself a man and stand up as a man. It has nothing to do with ego. Unless you are prepared to do that as a man, you're nobody. So it has nothing to do with ego. As a matter of fact, if you don't put your ego aside, a lot of times you may not be able to take a stand.
But I'm saying, let's hack back to the period pre-independence, 1978 into 1979. The various moves that were taken by the SLP, do you think it had anything to do with ego and what you said about the outcome of the '74 general election?
It had nothing to do with that, Timothy. It had everything to do with doing it right. You cannot, as a leader, want to take the country from A to B and then do it surreptitiously, underhand manner, as we saw it at the time. You can't do that. In fact, you can with certain people, because I suspect, for example, there's a different psychology between the UWP and the SLP. If the SLP was in power or is in power, it could probably get away with murder because the UWP is very laid back. They wouldn't do anything to hurt the economy, etc., etc. On the other hand, even today, as we speak, on Wednesday, a day before the 39th anniversary of independence, there are certain elements in the St. Lucia Labour Party, and I've not been a member of that party since, God, 92, from the Labrie Convention. You remember that, right? We'll do worse than we ever did. But that's the psychology of the two different political parties.
But how were you feeling then about Sir John Compton, the Premier of St. Lucia at that time? What was your feeling about him?
I never had a personal relationship with Sir John.
Was that deep hatred? Was it?
No. I have been warned early in politics when I went up for Marshall in '72. A lot of people who didn't even know me were telling me what to look out for, and hatred was one of those things I had to put aside. But I'd always noticed, and by the way, Mr. Girodi, Henry Girodi, deceased, was married to my mother's first cousin, the second wife, Tita, who died recently, was actually my mother's first cousin. They're the children of a brother and a sister. So I saw Tita sometimes. I went there whenever I felt like going and see her, and sometimes I meet Henry there and I say hello to him and we speak. But Sir John was always a tense fella, I found. And I don't like to be around tense people. I like people who are relaxed. You understand? But when I got to know Sir John, I found him a person who was more amenable, who was more relaxed even than Henry himself. And so we became actually very close, not for a very long period because he died some years after. But I found that maybe in 92, I'll give you a story, when this thing happened at Labrie and people on the stage, I won't call any names, after the convention had elected Julian Hunt as political leader. Oh, where's Peter Josie going? That's in Creole. We don't want this guy in our party. I had 25 people from Beaufort there, the delegates. They had a transit. I had my own van. When they heard that, I had taken Lawson from a bar downstairs. In fact, Rick Wayne was at that bar downstairs, Cito, a man from Beaufort. When the people from Beaufort heard that, they left the hall and came down the steps with me. And they said, Peter, we are going to meet Compton and Henry Giraudy now. You have to leave that party today, now. I had to calm these guys down. 3 fellas from that group stayed back. Hicks Tobias, Civilus Jeffrey, and a guy called Lubin, Michael Lubin, I think. Michael was his name, yeah. The 3 of them. The other 22 guys, plus myself, I had to go take them away from the and cool them down because they say they're not going back. When I reflect, Tim, on the politics, on how I have played it, what I did and didn't do, that is something that always comes up in my mind. That day, if I had listened to these 22 people who were so strong, and I had gone straight from there to talk to Henry Giraudy on Compton, what would have been, what would happen to me? What would have happened to me? I've always thought about that question.
What would you do differently about your involvement in the pre-independence talks and the pre-independence period, if any?
On reflection, Timothy, based on the way the parties were going, I don't think I could have done anything much. What I think I could have done, and maybe the more intelligent people in the party, was to present an alternative constitution to Ted Rowlands. I think we commented on the green paper that they had presented, etc., etc. But we ourselves as a party did not present a separate constitution. For example, the idea of a president, the idea of a unicameral house, the idea of fixed elections, date, constituency boundaries and how you change them. These things, we should have done that. And you know, one reason for that is not only going to Ted Rowlands to show that we are thinking and prepared, but also that could have formed the basis today of a document for St. Lucia to move forward. And that is something I regret, that we did not prepare our own progressive, quote-unquote, constitution. We spoke a lot around the subject, but we never had a document to show this is our intention, that is what we want our island to become if we are going to hand us independence.
Do you think that people were really interested in things of that nature at that time, in terms of getting a document, in terms of going through it thoroughly, and in terms of being impartial in coming to a conclusion as to whether St. Lucia should have attained political independence from Britain or not? Or was it basically along party lines?
Tim, most people are laid back. In St. Lucia, it's probably worse than the rest of the Caribbean. I think at the time it was due to our lack of maybe formal education. It's not that we didn't care, but people in St. Lucia, up to now, are very laid back. You call them to a meeting, things go. Even when you might be offering them little perks to attend, for some reason they find they don't attend. But I'll tell you what, one of the things I've learned in politics and in life, not only politics, in life, is that if you want something done, you have to get out and do it yourself most of the time. So if you want people to understand what you're saying and doing, sometimes you have to stand on a platform by yourself, literally. Start with 2 or 3 people, or go to homes and start talking to them. Start small. After a year, if you're determined and you're not giving up, you'd be surprised what you can do.
What if we
But
had,
we didn't do that.
What if we had that same situation occurring in 2018, knowing everything that you're doing right now? You've gone through the era from 1979 up to 2018. How do you think this whole situation would have played out, considering that people now, people are more prone to violence, people are more aggressive, we are a bit more, even more divided? What do you think this environment, the situation have been right now, if we are leading up to independence and the atmosphere was so heavily charged, as was the case in 1978, 79?
We don't have the same situation. I'm not trying to escape the question. But what I believe would happen, as much as I have very little respect, very little, for one or two persons in the leadership of the opposition party, I still believe that they have sufficient, their heirs are sufficiently to the ground that they would reach some compromise and some understanding with the other party. If it was the other way around, I think the same thing would happen if the UWP was in opposition and the SLP was in power. I think St. Lucia and St. Lucians, we say they are more violent. I don't know that that is so. We say we are this and that, but I believe, generally speaking, people are smarter. People are more exposed to news of the world. People know to a large extent what's going on. And a lot of people have worked very hard for what they have. And I don't think they would allow somebody who is in a demonstration to easily cross their fence, come and break down their thing, take over and things like what some people look like they wanted to do. But I will be quite honest with you and say that even though I have no regard for one or two politicians that are still alive and active, and it's because of what I know about them, I still believe if they're put to the test on both sides, there will be some kind of meeting of minds. The business sector, who has probably more to lose than anybody else, will literally make sure that they come together. The church, which has always tried to intervene in a peaceful way, will try to do the same thing. So I do not believe, unless, of course, something so egregious happens that the people themselves begin to take to the streets without any leaders, bypass them and things so. But I cannot see that scenario playing out.
Mr. Peter Josie, I spoke with him on the eve of the island's 39th independence anniversary. That's February 21st of 2018. When we come back in just a moment, two guests, Mr. Tony Nicholas, Marketing and PRO Officer for the Independence Committee, and Mr. Jeshuran Andrew, who's the President of the National Youth Council, in the build-up to the island's 40th independence anniversary under the theme, All In, Our Journey, Our Future. This is Newsmaker Live. Welcome back. Thank you so much for staying with us. We have painted a picture of what the pre-independence period was like from Mr. Peter Josie. From his perspective, one of the delegates who participated in the pre-independence constitutional talks over in London. And once again, I spoke with him in February of 2018. We are just 9 days away from our 40th independence anniversary, and we're looking forward now to the various events and activities that are part of the celebration. With me to discuss these issues, we're talking about Mr. Tony Nicholas, who is the Marketing and PRO for the Independence Committee, and Mr. Jeshuran Andrew, President of the National Youth Council. You would have listened to that interview, heard from Mr. Peter Josie. Your thoughts, Mr. Andrew?
Well, I think it was quite interesting to hear that from him, his perspective what he thinks should have happened back then. And one of the things that I heard him mention specifically that I hear a few young people now question is the fact that St. Lucia, maybe we should have gone the route of having a president and restructuring, the leadership of St. Lucia. And it would be interesting to see what kind of debate could come out locally from persons in that regard. So I think it's something that as young people, maybe we can start questioning as we move forward.
In your interaction with the members of the NYC, are they really interested in what transpired in the run-up to independence 1979? Do you talk about it at all?
Yes, it is something the young people talk about. You have some of them who are very interested in the history, not just politically, but we have young people who are very interested in the history of the island and what obtained. And recently, even with the appointment of the Governor General, you found a lot of talk was around, and it pushed a few young persons to go back to do a little research to understand certain perspective of things. So you have young people who are interested in the history and whatnot.
Do you think that there are sufficient avenues whereby people can go out there and ferret out the information and get it?
I think the information is not as readily available as it should be. And so you have a bit of digging to do as a young person, and the average young person would probably shoot directly to places like YouTube. You would get some videos, but you would have to go dig in, you'd have to go to the archives, try to get newspapers or different things from different places, libraries and whatnot. You'd have to do a bit of research, yes.
Tony, you think that the information should be more readily available?
I definitely think so, Timothy. And especially when it comes to one of the things that came out of the clip that you played previously was with regards to the Constitution.
Mm-hmm.
I've always believed that that's where the true power lies. Most persons say, well, the true power lies at the ballot box, every 5 years and so on. But I think it is really time that we reinforce that notion at this time that the Constitution be revisited and it needs to be revised. And I think that is where the real power lies. If we could adequately have a Constitution that speaks to our needs as St. Lucians.
Do you think we have sufficient quantity in terms of those discussions taking place in the media? Because it was only today on my new talk show on Real FM that somebody was saying that there's just not sufficient awareness in terms of the build-up to our independence. I mean, so that you really, you will not miss anything in terms of the programming taking place on radio and also on television.
I smile as you raise that topic because on 2 separate occasions today I had similar discussions. I believe that we are at a I shouldn't even say at a crossroads. I will go as far as saying we're probably at an all-time low when it comes to the media in terms of not just content, but in terms of personalities who you could readily engage within the framework of the media to have such discussions. And it is sad that we're at this point, 40 years independence on, and you cannot vent out these things in a non-partisan way on many radio stations or even TV stations here in St. Lucia, that we become so partisan that even from, the word go persons paint a certain picture and so on. So I think it is something as we celebrate our 40th anniversary, even the media, because we're part of that journey. We're looking at our tourism, we're looking at our innovation, we're looking at culture, we're looking at art, we're looking at sports. But the media, which is supposed to put all of these things together and put all of it out there, we need to begin to self-examine and see what role, what context we could put ourselves in as we go forward into the future.
Ms. Andrew, you think there's sufficient buy-in as far from the perspective of young people, buying into all the activities, buying into all the discussions that are taking place? Do you think that young people really care about what's happening? In other words, do you think they're more preoccupied with their phones and technology and Cardi B?
I think you have quite a blend there in St. Lucia. You have the young persons who would be interested and they would take the time to sit and listen to programs and try to do some research, educate themselves. We have debates happening in different communities, and sometimes depending on the topic you get young people having to go and do that sort of research. But I think, yes, there are several distractions that they may be more attracted to in this day and age. But you still have a few young persons in pockets around who show some level of interest.
What do you think can be done to ensure that there's wider support among the young people
for
independence?
I think, too, we need to we need to redesign or repackage how we sell basically the importance of patriotism and being interested in the general well-being and development of one's country. And I think that many young people, their interest, I would say, is more in things that are of recent, you know, and so we need to find a way maybe to show them the importance, and it goes back also to culture and other things that are historical, that we need to, even for our Jeune Creole, we need to start from there and start rebuilding, start bringing them back in. You still have the creative young persons, I'm sure, who do well in the little cabaret competitions and that sort of thing, but we need to rebuild that culture that flows into patriotism, and then it will develop that momentum into being interested in the whole independence and what it's about.
I imagine there's a huge role for the education system.
Pardon me?
A huge role for the education system?
Yes, of course. Through our school networks, I think also we can have a lot of that influence. And I see some of the preschools doing some work now in that, educating the younger ones as to, you know, what happened before our flag, the importance, the coat of arms. I'm seeing a few of the preschools getting involved in that now, and that is kudos to them on that.
Let's go straight into the activities, Tony. What are some of the events that we can expect between now and the actual observance?
Okay, before I go into the events coming up, Timothy, let me just reiterate that Independence 40 was actually launched on the 12th of December 2018. And coming into January, it is not just about February. We have a year-long calendar of activities planned. So, for example, in January, we had the National Fast and Prayer, which kicked off on January 14th. We had the National Awards of Excellence in January as well. You had the National Archives with the exhibition 40 Years On. We had the Library Primary School putting on their pageant. And we had a number of competitions being launched in January as part of activities for Independence 40. So coming into the home stretch, February, well, not the home stretch, but the main month of independence, we kicked off February with Calypso Legacy on the 2nd of February, which was a fantastic event. And then coming into, well, we have this weekend, on Friday, we have the Miss Independence pageant, and there are 10 young ladies representing communities across the island. The government assumed responsibility for this pageant in 2018, and it was a very, very successful event. We've been assisted by Events Company of St. Lucia in putting on this event on Friday at the National Cultural Center. Then you move into Saturday the 16th. We have the National Sports Awards, which every year this forms part of activities for independence. On Sunday the 17th, we have the Ecumenical Service. This year, instead of just having one ecumenical service, there are 5 of them spread out across the island. So in the north, it will be at the St. Joseph the Worker Church. In the south, at the Victorian Pentecostal Church. In the east, the Faith Pentecostal Church in Meacood. In the west, the Ancillary Cathedral. And in Central Castries, we have the Basilica of the Immaculate Conception. Also on that date, we have the Strides of Unity. That's a youth activity. Joshua is going to elaborate more on that particular event.
So let me allow Joshua to elaborate on it.
Well, the Strides of Unity is an activity conceptualized by the National Youth Council, and we felt that for independence we need to show a bit of unity, express a bit of unity amongst the young people of St. Lucia. And so we put together this activity whereby we have a wooden, locally sculpted, it's a batter. We call it the Youth Unity Batter. And the concept is such that the batter has a base, and the top piece is detachable. So it's a batter with the top is the shape of St. Lucia carved out. And the Governor General is expected to hand over the batter to the first young person taking part in the activity.
It starts when? What time?
It starts at 7 a.m. at his residence on Sunday morning.
Okay.
And we have young persons throughout the island that will be waiting in the various communities to receive the batter. So they will either be running, skateboarding, cycling, riding their horse, their motorcycle, whatever it will be, young people. That batter will go from one young person to the other. So from his residence, we'll go down the west coast through Soufrière and round Vieux-Fort back up the east coast. When we get to Bexor, we're traveling through Tuapito, Forester Back Road into Babono, through Plateau, down into River Meter, Kaima, Jebo, Seju, through Grizzly Town, back down the highway and back up to the Governor General's residence. It is our hope that the battle remains at his residence for if the activity is to be executed again in the future, then it can take a similar structure. Each community has submitted a cause that the young people of that community will be uniting for. So we have certain things like child abuse, violence against women, and etc. So on the day, we will have young people showing those banners and uniting for certain things that they would like to see happening in the country. We have music that will be along with us. We have persons, photographers, videographers that will be on the road capturing the essence of the event. We have a full layout of sports persons and other young persons. We have disabled persons in wheelchairs, etc., who will be taking part in the activity as well.
How did you come about that particular plan?
Well, a few years ago, there was a concept for, I think it was the Queen's Relay or something it was. And I think that battle would have started, I think, in Trinidad. And it would have traveled up the Caribbean. You had young people in each island running with that battle from one airport to the other, or around the island in one other way, and leaving to go to the next island. And so that idea or that concept is what we modified into this version for St. Lucia.
Tony, can we continue the various activities?
Yes, certainly. So that's Sunday, a really packed agenda going into the weekend. Then we go into next week, the main event on the 21st and the 22nd. And we've been putting out a call to all St. Lucians to converge on the city of Castries. I won't steal anyone's thunder. I think at an appropriate time sometime this week, there will be an official announcement made as to the closure on the 21st, which is the pre-Independence Day. So on that day, we have the St. Lucia story. Pitizil, Guawev, Small Island, Big Dreams. It's a huge stage production. I think one of the biggest will be staged in St. Lucia. And that is going to be taking place at the SAB, the VG playing field, from 9 in the evening. Okay, and it is absolutely free. It's a free production. Prior to that, at 6 p.m., down in the city of Castries, Constitution Park to be precise, there will be a number of cultural presentations being staged there. That event is being coordinated by Events Company of St. Lucia. So that's at 6, and at 9 you have the stage production, PTCL Guawev, St. Lucia Story, at the SAB. Then later that evening, at around 10 p.m. or thereabout, down in the city of Castries on Jeremy Street, we'll be having the Best of St. Lucia. That production will involve calypsonians, your soca artists, your Dennery segment artists, and this is expected to go on up until just before midnight. At that point, you're going to have the raising of the St. Lucia flag and a grand firework display at the Castries waterfront. Thereafter, the Best of St. Lucia continues until 2 a.m. So this is huge. I mean, we're really asking everyone to come on board. Sometime later on this week, I expect the police to give their plan as far as traffic management. As you could well imagine, this has to be properly managed as far as parking and what have you throughout the city. So it's a family affair, and we're asking folks from all over the island to join us in the city on the 21st of February. Then we move into February 22nd, Independence Day. 9 a.m., the annual parade being put on by the police, the uniform groups and what have you. The police have assured us that this year they're going to put on something very exciting, something different. And I must take their word for it, because they've already started putting on some military tattoos across the island that have been very exciting. They did the first one last week, Friday, down in Soufrière, another one on Sunday in Vieux-Fort. One took place today, Larissus Dennery, and the final one is happening on Friday up in Grosley. So the police, the annual parade, the inspection of the guard and what have you by the Governor General, that is happening on the 22nd from 9 a.m. Then from 1 p.m., we have another parade, a parade for different, something that has never been done in St. Lucia and is happening for Independence 40. We have this parade that's going to involve floats and different companies, sporting groups, different aspects of St. Lucia life, our culture, our carnival, and that float will move from the Vigi roundabout into the city of Castries, similar to the carnival route. And this is one of the activities I'm particularly excited about since it's happening for the very first time. So again, we're asking persons to come on down, a family affair, come into the city and view what we have to offer. That float has been called Anouay. Come see. Let us all come see. Let's all come and celebrate, as the theme says, all in, our journey, our future.
What about the youth rally? And I'm asking specifically because a young lady also called my radio show this week and asking what's happening to the youth rally this year.
Okay, Tim. Okay, so we thought that this year you don't want things to be too predictable and you don't want everything to be the same. Again, as I mentioned earlier on, it's a year long of activities. So this year, we tried to decentralize some of the activities. I just mentioned the police with their military tattoos, and those took place across the island. The ecumenical services, instead of having one, we have 5 of them across the island as well. The battle relay involves communities across the island. So with the youth rally, it is happening on a district basis. As you know, the education system is divided onto districts. You have District 1 up until District 7. So each district will be having their own school rally. So that's the plan for this year. So you'll have rallies happening, for example, in Choiseul, in VA4, and a number of communities across the island, as opposed to just having one rally.
All those rallies taking place on one day?
On the 20th of February, all the school rallies are supposed to be taking
And
place.
occurring what, simultaneously?
Simultaneously. Very much like the ecumenical service. There's one pattern for the services on Sunday, and they're all taking place at the same time. Same opt-ins for the school rallies.
We have a 40-year-old, right, in St. Lucia, 40th independence anniversary. What do you make of a 40-year-old having problems with crime, healthcare, education?
Well, I think 40 years for a country actually is pretty young. And I think we have made some headway, we have made some progress as a nation coming forward, economically, etc. And I think now is a time for us to reflect on what has transpired, look at our limitations, look at some of the errors that we have made, and use this opportunity as a milestone to plot the way forward in terms of what should we do moving forward to develop the country. I think that also, as a country, we need to engage our young people more at the head table of the decision making. A lot of the young people have new ideas and approaches to different things that may be shocking to some persons at what some of those young persons can come up with. And I think that sort of thing needs to happen, where we engage them in a lot of those discussions. And I think also that it is a time for us to see, basically compare what other countries has done, what have worked, and take that and see how we can tweak it to fit in our specific situation, our specific environment here in St. Lucia.
But definitely, based on what you're saying there, this time around, well, I just want to see, generally speaking, do you think that young people were consulted in terms of putting the various activities together?
Yes, the young persons were consulted. We had youth representation on the committee. We had young people throughout the island who gave their views on certain aspects of it. Yeah.
If you had your way, and I'm talking about you as president of the NYC, and speaking on behalf of young people, what do you think some of the changes should be as far as St. Lucia 40?
Changes in terms of?
Generally speaking, in terms of life in St. Lucia, what should be you think should be the priority from the perspective of the nation's young people?
Well, from the perspective of the young people moving forward, I think that nationally, a lot of the young people think that more emphasis should be placed, for example, on agriculture. It is an industry that we need to have work more in tandem with the tourism industry. And we understand what the tourism industry can do for St. Lucia. But I think moving forward that we need to see how best we can maximize on the benefits that the tourism industry can cause for the agriculture industry in St. Lucia. Many of our young people also think that the creative industry needs to be developed a little further, and that flows again into tourism, so that we can produce or serve the tourists with more of that St. Lucian product. And so those are just a few of the things that I think are moving forward that we can look at. You also have young people now who are interested, I would say, in some of the sports that are not traditional in St. Lucia. And there exist several opportunities for a lot of those young persons in those sports abroad, whether it be as a career, whether it be scholarship-wise. So I think the necessary facilities need to be put in place for a few of those sports. We have a lot of young people now speaking, for example, about archery. It is something very unheard of here, and there seems to be an uprising in it. I think even our skateboarders, you see a lot of them now out and about. 8-9 years ago, you would not have seen that.
It's making a resurgence. Yeah.
Yes, yes. And there are a few other sports. The table tennis is on a rise again, I would say also. And so, long jump, a few of those sports that are not really spoken of often, you find a lot of young people are interested in it now. And I think it has a lot to do with the availability of information that young people can go out and try to find what they are good at. And so you find they grow or develop these passions, which are different from traditionally or what is really stressed on locally. And so we need to put some effort into developing some of those areas as well.
What do you think to come out of the hosting of those activities, pre-independence and even after?
I think it's a start of things to come, Timothy. Earlier on, you raised a topic about where do we start in terms of the schools and getting people more involved. I think quite apart from just the activities, we need to engage in more discussions like these. Very often you hear persons say, similar to Christmas, at the beginning of December you hear persons say, I'm not feeling the Christmas spirit. And I often say to persons, you don't have to wait for someone. I cannot make you feel what you don't want to feel. Similar with independence, it's about us, it's about you, it's about me. It's either you believe in independence, you believe in your country, or you don't. So if you believe, here's what you could do. Wear your national colors, you begin to, if you're a radio announcer, you play. I don't have to be on a committee to say to you, okay, play more St. Lucian music during independence. This is about us, put on your own activities. Whereas you have a committee putting on major activities, that doesn't prevent anyone from staging something from a school. You know, from January, probably every single school, every Monday, the assembly could focus on an aspect of independence. This is about us, and we must begin to take action or take responsibility for ourselves and stop looking up to others, you know, to do it for us. We need to do things for ourselves. And I believe that that is where the discussion needs to begin.
What is being done by the private sector?
A lot more, I wish. But they have come on board, slowly but surely. Earlier on, well, in December, we launched a Prix Bel Kai commercial competition, the best decorated business place. So we saw a few of them coming on board, but from this week, we've seen a lot more business houses being decorated and coming on board. We were hoping that for the 40th, it could have been a bigger burst. But again, I say to myself, well, you know, persons compare other islands and so on. But again, we need to take these things on board ourselves, not wait for somebody to push us or prod us and say, okay, hey, it's almost like sometimes people wake up and say, hey, independence is upon us. The same way again, going back, hey, Christmas is a week away, and then people spring into action. So the change has to come from within. We have to want to do those things. We have to really believe that this country that we claim to love in our national anthem, that we truly love it. I suspect a lot of that love has been put aside for independence because tomorrow is Valentine's Day. So probably after Valentine's Day, we begin to love our country a little more than we love other things that probably are not as important, but to each his own. But I'm just saying it must come from within. And we must instill that in our young people, in our children, and what have you.
You're watching Newsmaker Live right here on DBS Television. My name is Timothy Polion. At 10 o'clock, we conclude with the clip that peaked. In just a moment, your calls. My guests, Tony Nicholas and Jeshuan Andrew. Stay with us. Welcome back. Thank you so much for staying with us. We'll put a telephone number on screen right now so that you can call with your questions and comments for my two guests. Once again, Tony Nicholas, Marketing and PRO, Independence Committee, and Jeshuan Andrew, President of the National Youth Council. You can call. You've heard the discussion, and we started with Mr. Peter Josie, one of the delegates who participated in the consultation, that should be the Constitution talks over in London, and that is in the build-up to the island's attainment of political independence from Great Britain on February 22nd of 1979. We have our first call online. Good evening. Newsmaker Live, you're on the air. Hello, good evening to you, caller.
Yes, good night.
Hi, good night to you, sir.
Yes, okay. I have a proposal here for the committee.
Go ahead.
Yeah, for years I've been speaking to officials, but my message seems to be falling on deaf ears. I'm saying that we are boasting ourselves that we have so many tourists visitors to the island per week, something 3 or 4 ships in port. I am saying that we should really utilize upstairs the market and have different cultural groups portraying for 3 or 4 hours to these visitors, and whatever sums of money collected can pay the actors of that particular day. And more so, you could have a local bar with our local alcohol and a restaurant with our local dishes to sell to the visitors. And instead of they having to be being harassed by our citizens around the city, have them in a stable position upstairs the market, beef up your security, and show them the culture of what we have to offer. Because you see nothing, just walking around 10, 15 minutes, get tired, go places which they're not supposed to go to and get themselves involved in mischiefs. I would like the authorities to take a very serious hint on my contribution. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you so much. What do you think, Tony?
Open to the ideas. I guess the authorities should be listening, but I will go further and say that, it's not only a place like that we need for visitors. We need a place like that even for our school children. We could go and see what is happening with our culture, with our history and what have you, and we don't even have a place like that for ourselves. So, yeah.
And I think to support Tony's earlier point, that as St. Lucians, we can all play a part in the celebrations. And I think that ideas like that, 2 or 3 friends who already have bars or whatever it is can come together and execute that sort of thing. And
we have a caller
be
line.
part of it.
Good evening, Newsmaker Live, you're on the air.
Hey, good evening, team. How you doing?
I'm okay, sir. How about you?
Not too bad. And to Tony and the president.
Good evening.
Good evening. Good evening.
Yes, I tend to agree with some points first that came out by Mr. Josie in how independence came about. Sometimes it's good to involve the people a little bit, but there's always room for constitutional reform, which has been something spoken about for many years, but yet for some reason unable to really push for that. That's on that side of the show. Whether it be political or non-political reasons, it sometimes stunts growth and development of people. So that was then, and this is now. Sometimes because of the now, you have to make the necessary changes. But on the end of what Tony was speaking about, I find for us St. Lucians, and Tony and I spoke some time ago, and I said to him, I went to a certain country, which to me is a little bit behind us in where we are in development. And the amount of tea boutiques, to call it that had their national flags on display, had shirts representing their islands on display. It was amazing to me, amazing, that I could not believe. I was astonished, to be honest, because I've never seen so much pride and unity being displayed. And I find when you go around in a lot of our shops, in a lot of areas, stores, there's not that sense of St. Lucian pride. To me, we this year, Tim, look at it. How many vehicles are actually flying flags this year? So far,
I'm not seeing many. Just a few. Mm-hmm.
How many vehicles have the bonnet? There was a big debate one time over whether the flag should be on the bonnet of a car, and based on the Constitution, and the list goes on, and so on and so on. But how many people are actually flying the flag this year? I find it a little bit low. In regard to the radio stations boosting, I think sometimes we put business in front of pride, sadly to say. Now, of course, every radio station every television station. I mean, I went to cricket and I didn't go, I was working at cricket, let me correct myself. And I asked some organizers, but how come independence is coming up? I'm seeing so many Englishmen and women around, so many foreigners, but yet still on the big screen, I've not seen that famous St. Lucian song that was done with Teddy and all of the guys being played. I've not seen much of independence coming to say, hey, okay, maybe they're not going to come back this year, but maybe they may come back next year, or maybe they may have a reason. It's marketing, it's a push. I was taken aback by that, and I find whether it's a money thing or a promoting and you need sponsorship or what the case may be, I think sometimes we have to look at things in the bigger picture. We're celebrating 40 years, after all. Secondly, into the aspects of development. As the president of the St. Lucia Motor X Club, my members right now in the club are pushing so hard to get awareness out on what we are doing for independence and the organization. That it sometimes amazes me the amount of begging, to use that word, that one has to do to a certain extent to get a little airplay or a little awareness about what's happening within your club organization for independence. Luckily, some stations have taken on to it well. Luckily, people know people. But if you don't know somebody, then it seems difficult for a buy-in to come in. It should almost be natural because we're about celebrating independence. We ourselves are putting on the rally, the Round the Island rally on the Sunday, the 24th, with the motorcycles and so on. And I must give kudos to the commissioner and his office and the men that of course work along with the commissioner for making it happen. Traffic department as well. We're doing supermoto in Castries in the city. For the first time, we're actually in the boulevard. Given there's so much activities, or so many rather activities taking place, we cannot be on the market steps, so on the market area, sorry. So we're this year in the boulevard area, Bridge Street area. But Tim, it takes so much for us to market, and all the different little communities that may be doing something, and the awareness. I find sometimes as St. Lucians we need to put aside the business of money. Although it is there, it is needed because staff have to get paid and the list goes on. But a little volunteerism, a little, push will change the census of the people into feeling more pride. Like someone, Tony, I think, said it about Christmas. Some people say they wasn't feeling Christmas. It's because of what's in the air. Are we promoting our St. Lucian music around this time of the year? I can go on and on, but I'll give others an opportunity to shed light, Tim. But as usual, good show.
Thank you so much for calling, sir. We continue to take your calls. Once again, you're watching Newsmaker Live on DBS Television. It's already 18 minutes before 10 o'clock. We conclude at the top of the hour with the clip that peaked, and my guests this evening, Tony Nicholas, Marketing and PRO, Independence Committee, and Jeshuan Andrew, National Youth Council President. We have a caller line. Good evening, you're on the air. Hello, okay. Please turn on the volume of your television set before you call. We've been saying that long before we attain political independence from Britain. Good evening, you on the air?
Good evening, Tim.
Hi.
And good evening to your guests.
Good evening to you.
Good evening.
Tim, I'm delighted we're having this conversation, and I think it's appropriate that at this significant milestone that we take a greater interest in our independence, our story, our journey, etc. Having said that, Tim, I think we need to do some serious soul-searching and introspection. I say that because I drive along the waterfront, heading to La Toc even, you see plenty flags. I didn't say St. Lucian flags, but flags which should be St. Lucian flags on display. And the experience is a number of those flags are not authentic St. Lucian flags. The color of the blue is not the correct color. And I say if the symbolism does not reach us and impact us, and we don't recognize that something as important as a national symbol deserves that level of attention, then whether it's 40 years, 35 years, 50 years, we are not doing something basic in a way that should be correct. And I'm not saying this to be a wet blanket, but to just add a sense of realism to what we're trying to do, the experience we're trying to coalesce around, and the fact that we need to do better than have outside the government buildings even flags which have the wrong color of blue. So I know it's not something that your guest could directly answer, but it's something for us to just recognize that we should be focusing on the quality of the experience and not just on the quantity. I would much prefer to see one flag somewhere, one nice big flag, which is the correct color of the flag, that we could all point to and say, hooray, than a flag at every corner which does not capture that national identity.
Thank you so much for calling. And every time I hear this discussion, I say, well, where is Dunson St. Omer? We designed the flag, we painted it and so on, because we continue to hear about the cerulean blue.
Yes.
Okay, what about this, Tommy?
Well, it's a discussion we've been having for the past couple of days, Timothy, and the caller is correct with his observation. Quite apart from just the color of the flag, we have not been getting the dimensions of the flag. There's a fixed dimension that the flag is supposed to come in. So over the last couple of days, the discussion have taken the form that it is time that we begin to legislate the correct use of the flag as well as the correct color and the dimensions, so that an importer stop bringing in the flags. If the flag is not of the correct color, the proportion, or the correct design, those flags could be seized or stopped by customs. But until that doesn't happen, then you have people bringing in all different colors of the flags. Also, what happens, sometimes the flags, the material is not quite durable. So some of the flags that were put up very early, as you could well imagine, lately it's been very windy, especially on evenings, and a few of the flags have become tattered over a short period of time. So, again, these are discussions we need to have, but it needs to move beyond discussions, and we need to decide, are we going to legislate this thing once and for all? Okay, this is how you use the flag. That if it is used in an inappropriate manner, the relevant authorities, meaning the police, customs, could stop, seize, or what have you. So I quite agree with the caller. We need to get this thing right. After 40 years, it needs to be established that this is what it is, once and for all.
You hoping that this will happen next year? We have a caller 9, Mr.
Hello,
Bridge?
good evening.
Okay, good evening to you, ma'am. How are you?
Fine, thank you.
Yes, go ahead, please.
My question is this. I didn't hear the beginning of your interview. However, I would like to find out, I noticed that they are building something between, in the center, just in the junction of
the waterfront?
The waterfront.
Mm-hmm.
Is that for a monument?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, caller.
And is that a monument that we've had in St. Lucia for a long time?
No, it's not.
It's something that
It's
just
an
came in.
independence monument, yeah.
Oh, but you won't give us any details.
No, it's supposed to be unveiled, and at the unveiling,
It's a surprise.
you get it, yes, more or less, yes.
About the flags. You see this thing about color? Yeah, I know everybody wants color. And you see, once I see my yellow, my black, looking close to the blue, that's my flag. To me, the real color, if they get it, thank you. But once I see the flag, I am happy. And I've noticed that most persons don't have flags. I had a problem with the flag, though. One of the questions I want to ask you is government bringing in these flags or somebody else?
As far as I know, most times private persons.
Private persons. But
import the
government
flags.
don't bring in the flags where somebody can say, well, I will go to the Ministry of so-and-so to get a few flags, to buy a few flags, to acquire some flags.
You could inquire with Foreign Affairs. At one point in time, I know they had flags there. I'm not sure if this year there are flags available for sale, but you could inquire with that ministry.
What I find is a lot of the ways the flags are made, sometimes those flags fall off the vehicle, the window, and so maybe somebody might spend some money with the flag and the flag falls off and they don't want to put it back.
Yes.
You know, so they should find other creative ways of making those flags in such a way that if you put it to your window, then it wouldn't fall off.
Okay.
You understand? Maybe that's one of the problems. But for me, I find if there are not many flags around, it's because probably persons don't want to buy it. But I wouldn't say that because we don't really have national pride. People show their national pride in different ways.
But there are a couple of stores in the city, caller.
Pardon?
There are a couple of stores in the city as we speak where flags are being sold.
Yes, and there are other little things that the stores sell, but sometimes they capitalize on it and they sell it very expensive.
Okay.
And that could be one of the reasons why government should be bringing in these things so that people wouldn't have to pay an arm and a leg for it.
Okay, thank you so much for calling, ma'am.
Thank you.
And I'm not too sure, God spare our lives, next year, Tony will not be speaking about the same thing with regard to the color of the flag.
Well, I'm hoping that we could continue the discussion. Like I said, we could move past that discussion, that there could be some conclusion via cabinet that once and for all, let us legislate this thing, that this is what it is, the size, the dimensions, the color moving forward.
As far as you know, will this be done?
Well, I'm not sitting in cabinet duty, but
No,
I can make the recommendations. Being part of the committee, I could suggest, I could press forward for it, but I would like it to be done. And like I said, it's a year-long celebration, so hopefully it could be part of the activities past February, before December.
Another caller 9, good evening. Newsmaker Live, you're on the air. Hello, good evening.
Hello, good evening.
Hi, good evening to you, caller.
I have a caller for the president of
the NYC.
NYC.
Go ahead, please.
Last year we did a trade show. A manufacturers. Like I'm an agro processor, and last year there was an exhibition in the Boulevard, and I've gone through the independent schedule, and I'm not seeing anything. And our theme is the best of St. Lucia. I'm not seeing anything for like persons in the manufacturing sector or agro processors. And as the president of the NYC rightly said, the focus is shift towards agriculture and added value products that can be derived from banana, plantain, coconut. But this year's independence, I am seeing absolutely nothing when it concerns to manufacturing. Not even an independence exhibition, also from the Ministry of Agriculture. So I do not know if the president of the NYC could comment, and also the PRO from the Independence Committee.
Thank you so much for calling, sir.
The last discussion I had where that was concerned, because when I came on board with the committee, it was also something that I personally observed. And the last word that I got was that the agro-processing, the exhibition with the Ministry of Agriculture, this is supposed to be taking place in October of this year. Like I've been saying, it's not just about February. The activities throughout 2019, culminating on December 12th, 2019. So my understanding is that the agro-processing will be part of the Ministry of Agriculture's exhibition sometime in October as part of World Food Day.
What's you, sir? Anything to add?
Yes, well, World Food Day is a time where the Ministry of Agriculture will be putting on that exhibition. I think the ministry is also going to have a float, I think, in part of the parade for independence this year as well. In addition to that, we have the 20 mixer, which is for 20 young entrepreneurs to meet and have mentorship from 20 experienced entrepreneurs, and we want to encourage, the young manufacturers and those persons as well to get in and join in that sort of program. It should be beneficial to them as well. So all those persons have been included, and like Tony rightly said, it's a year of celebrations moving forward.
Why the decision to have a year of celebrations, Tony?
I think it's simple because of 40. 40 we figured was a milestone, and we couldn't jam pack all the activities January to February, so we needed to go beyond that and include some of the activities you already have established. So for example, Youth Month, which is typically in April, will fall under the banner of Independence 40. In July, we had to engage the diaspora, and we needed to have an activity for them. So there's a grand homecoming planned sometime in July involving the diaspora. So we have activities spread out throughout the year. So we have different sectors, we have different parts of the island coming on board for Independence 40.
Okay. Now, any desire or any plans to have public discussions that are organized by the state? What about town hall meetings? Any decision on that? No?
Well, I'm not too sure about town hall meetings, but I could tell you again, throwing it over to Joshua, and there are two youth parliaments planned for this year, so Joshua could speak to that.
Go ahead.
So we have 2 sittings of Youth Parliament planned for this year. One is scheduled for the 25th of February and the other for the 8th of April. The one for the 25th of February, we have actually decided on the topic, so the young people would be debating for and against the development of Sir Arthur Lewis into a full-fledged university. And we have not decided on the topic yet for April, but we're hoping it would be probably surrounding healthcare or one of the other pressing issues affecting young persons. But we have a team so far for the sitting in February. We're only doing the lower house, but for April we hope to have both upper and lower house and go for a full audition process and get a fresh set of young debaters for the sitting in April, which falls in Youth Month.
Let's take in your
Yeah, I was just saying, it goes back to what I was saying again, Timothy. There's nothing stopping. You have different debating councils in St. Lucia, different youth and sports council. There's nothing stopping one of these organizations, or most of them, organizing these activities you mentioned and calling us and saying, hey, we would like to have this activity. Would you help us promote it? And we'd be more than willing to do so.
Let's take the final word, comments. Let's start with you, Mr. Andrew. Final comments?
Well, my final comments are would like to encourage all young persons to take part in the activities for independence this year. You can go to the Facebook page, the Instagram page, the website, and find out what the activities are, where they will be happening, and contact if you have any queries or questions as to the specifics surrounding those activities. Let us all be part of the celebrations. There are several competitions ongoing. Let us seek to decorate our communities and be part of it. And it doesn't just have to be your community, your workplace, your home, and let us develop that sense of patriotism amongst the young people. In addition to that, I'm hoping that moving forward, every year we can have a lovely roster of activities for independence, and continue to having the youth input into it, as we saw this year, which was very important.
Final comments? So maybe you could take the opportunity to promote the activities.
Yes, definitely. Well, going into this weekend, like I said, on Friday, we're asking everyone to come out and support your community at the Miss Independence pageant. It's happening Friday, the 15th of February. Also on that date, we'll be announcing the winners of the song competition. We had a independent song competition. We received over 40 entries for that. We'll be announcing the winners on that day. On Sunday, the 17th, as Joshua mentioned, Strides of Unity. We have the ecumenical services taking place. On the Saturday, we have National Youth Awards. Next week, going into next week, the 21st, Tout Moon, Vini, Nututasam, we're all in. City of Castries, 6 p.m. cultural presentation, Constitution Park. 9 p.m. Our Story at the Saab Vigi playing field. 10 p.m. we have the Best of St. Lucia concert in the City of Castries. That continues following the raising of the flag at midnight with the grand firework display at midnight, and the concert goes on until 2 a.m. On the 22nd, you have the military parade from 9. Then at 1, you have the national parade involving all aspects of St. Lucia culture, commerce, business, agriculture, what have you, moving for the City of Castries. As one of the callers mentioned, we also have the bikers involved. We have the 4X Club involved with that parade throughout the city. So let's all take part. Let's all come on board. Visit the website, www.independence.lc, for more information. The full calendar is there, not just for February, but from March up until December. All of the activities are there. The numbers to call are there as well. So let's all play our part. All in our journey, our future. It is our independence.
Thank you very much, Tony Nicholas, and thank you very much, Mr. Joshua and Andrew, for being my guests on this evening's Newsmaker Live.
Thank you, Timothy.
Thank you.
And of course, during the first segment of the broadcast, we featured an interview I conducted with Mr. Peter Josie in February of last year. If it's Wednesday, it's Newsmaker Live. Time now for the clip that peaked. Once again, thank you so much for watching and thank you so much for participating. Please join me tomorrow afternoon, 12:30 on Real FM 91.3 and 91.5. We go up until 2 o'clock with my talk show. Good night. See you next time.